11 years after the last entry was released, the new installment of the Samurai Shodown series finally came out on June 2019, titled Samurai Shodown. But this latest episode is not a reboot as many may thought. It's actually a new addition to the series' rich but very confusing timeline. You see, the events of SamSho 2019 are set 1 year after the 5th episode and few months before the original Samurai Shodown. Are you still following, or did I already lose you? What you need to know is, this entry is part of the main canon, and although the game features some characters who are not supposed to show up until future entries, the developers did a great job justifying their presence so early in the timeline. As for why it took me nearly a year to make this video, well, there is a very good reason for that. I'm lazy. So without further ado, here's the Samurai Shodown 2019 story explained. 1787, 1 year after the events of Samurai Shodown 5, despite their efforts of reform from the new shogun, the land of Hinowa was still in turmoil. War, famine, and injustice were a daily struggle for the unfortunate people there, the result of years of corruption and decadence that the Tokugawa shogunate was drawn in just could not possibly be fixed in few months. People lost all faith in the Bakufu, the military government. It was the law of the strongest during these times, and the weak had no place in it. But amidst all this chaos, there were those who brandished their swords for the sake of the poor and the feeble. Yashamaru Kurama is a vigilante who dedicated his life in defending the weak and hunting the corrupted. He had an immense hatred for the Tokugawa shogunate since the day his father was wrongfully beheaded by one of their officers 4 years ago. His ruthless actions against the Bakufu made him a wanted criminal, forcing him to live in the shadows under the persona Karasutengu. Away from the political and social crisis in Hinowa, a far more sinister threat was taking shape and form. A long time ago, a young woman named Shizuka Gozen was brutally murdered with her lover. Her spirit, unable to make the passage to the other side, was trapped in a place between the living and the dead worlds. Shortly before the events of the game, the demon Ambrosia, the same entity behind the future misdeeds of Amakusa and Mizuki, corrupted the spirit of the poor woman, making her feel nothing but pain and hatred. Her grudge was so enormous that it caused a curse in the form of a dark and ominous cloud that spread not only in Japan but in different parts of the world. Concerned by this supernatural phenomenon, the Bakufu charged their two most trustworthy men, Jubei and Hanzo, to investigate. Refusing to be left behind, the heir to the shogunate, Yoshitora, also set off to resolve this urgent matter on his own, despite Jubei's protesting. Unbeknownst to them, their sworn enemy, Yashamaru, also had the intention to vanquish this new evil as a defender of the common people. Their paths were bound to be crossed. The foreboding cloud reached the borders of Kamui-Kotan, the homeland of the nature protector Nakururu. She immediately ventured toward the source of the evil in order to redress the toppled balance of her treasured forest. Meanwhile, another young woman with much less benevolent intents woke up from her deep slumber. Shiki found herself in a dark cave, unable to remember who she was or who brought her there. The only thing she could rely on was the faint voice in her head that kept calling and drawing her toward the disturbance. The curse's effect ended up hitting different parts of the world, and many foreign warriors came to the land of the rising sun, believing that the solution resided in finding and destroying the origin of the curse. One of these foreigners was Wu Ruishan, the beautiful but clumsy descendant of the Feng Shui clan, who was tasked by the Emperor of China to investigate behind the cause of the inexplicable rebellion in their homeland. Not all warriors were concerned about the curse, however, and some of them were just chasing their own benefits. Darlie Dagger, for example, came to Japan in her chase for the mysterious masked man who destroyed one of her ships. And despite looking like a ruthless pirate, she was actually just a brave and honest shipbuilder. Taking advantage of all the confusion around him, the despicable ninja Earthquake started gathering a considerable wealth from looting the abandoned houses. Thankfully, he was stopped by Galford before he had a chance to spend it. Last but not least, the wandering samurai Haomaru jumped headfirst into all this chaos as soon as he saw the ominous dark cloud in an attempt to end this crisis with his own hands, and hoping to find strong opponents in the way in his endless quest to perfect his swordsmanship. Before he could reach the source of the evil, his path was interrupted by his old friend turned fiercest enemy, Genjuro. The red-headed samurai cared little about the curse, and all he desired was to kill Haomaru and prove to be the superior warrior. Meanwhile, Nakururu met Charlotte, and the two engaged in a pointless fight over who gets to save the day. Spoiler, neither of them. While everyone was fighting each other, Yoshitora and Yashamaru arrived at the temple gate near where the source of the curse resided. The moment Yashamaru saw the Tokugawa heir, he found it to be the perfect chance to avenge those who the Bakufu oppressed for so long. Of course, Yoshitora was not the type to ignore such provocation, and the two engaged in a duel. Coming out victorious from the brutal showdown, Yashamaru continued the original purpose of his voyage. Little did he know, he was a target of Shizuka from the start. The young man shared a striking resemblance with her long-dead lover, and the vengeful spirit believed it was him. She summoned Yashamaru to the dimension where she dwelled, but even after bringing him in front of her, her rage and hatred stood above all other feelings and attacked him. Yashamaru fought well during the first round and managed to land some painful slashes to the fearsome ghost, but that just served to anger Shizuka even more than she already was. She took off her veil and started summoning her biggest and deadliest fan weapon. The young man managed to hold on and continued the fight. Once he saw an opening, he pulled out his strongest technique and finally landed the death blow to the restless spirit. Freed from the corruption, Shizuka was wondering about what happened. She realized that she was finally able to traverse to the other side, and after thanking Yashamaru for freeing her, her soul faded away as she ascended through the sky. The young man found himself in the living world again after he visited the grave of his father. He thought that he might win the battle against Shizuka, but his war against the Bakufu was far from over. Embracing his Karasutengo persona, he remained in the shadows, caring for the poor in need and punishing those who persecuted them. With the end of the curse, Jubi returned to Edo to report the good news to the newly appointed consul, but he did not forget to mention that whoever caused this crisis was still on the run. Hanzo was ready to help with the matter and sent his men across the land to look for the mysterious individual. He then went home and enjoyed the company of his family, something that he will no longer be able to do in the near future. Shiki was unconscious in the forest when she was found by a strange figure cloaked in black. It was of course Yuga the Destroyer, who would play a major role in sealing the fate of many characters in the future. The shadowy individual left her and brought her back to the cave where she was sleeping before, while whispering that the time of her awakening had not come yet. Several months after the unresolved match against Haomaru, Genjuro went back to his old vice of gambling, as he enjoyed one of the games in a den of dices. Without warning, he was stabbed in the back by a young girl. Although the wound was not life-threatening, it was a foreshadowing of what will eventually end his life. Genjuro didn't even bother asking who the girl was or why she attacked him. He just stood up and left. He knew that she was most likely a relative to one of his countless victims. The only thing that mattered to him was the desire to surpass Haomaru and kill him in a duel. But for the time being, he had to attend to his wound and rest for a while, which probably explains why he was absent in the original SamSho game. As for Haomaru, once the curse of Shizuka ended, he set off in search for a renowned swordsman, hoping to measure his strength against his, all for the sake of honing his skills and becoming the greatest samurai that ever existed. Special thanks to my patrons for their generous support. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and why not consider subscribing to the channel. Stay safe and thanks for watching.